94.9 The Rock here at the Ballroom with Incubus and fresh. Well, they're not so fresh. You guys were late getting in after doing New York City, Mexico City, doing a promo tour for the upcoming tour, the new album 8. Congratulations! Finished in the top 5 sales for the first week. That's amazing.
Yeah. Awesome, thank you.
Well, and because the business of music has changed so much in the 20 plus years you guys have been a band. And how has that affected your creativity? Like, has the business side of the music industry changed how you make music?
For us who, we're a band, so we function by getting together and playing music together, playing our own instruments. So that part of things hasn't really changed for us. The way music is consumed and sold, obviously, is the biggest change in the music industry. But that hasn't really influenced us that much in what we do.
Right.
But
It's influenced how we put out albums. Like we've the last thing we put out was an EP called Trust Fall Side A. And one of the reasons we decided to put out an EP because it occurred to us that maybe people aren't buying whole albums anymore. So it was an interesting experiment. It got us on tour again, and then all we kept hearing from our hardcore fans was, "When's an album coming
Where's
out?"
the rest of it?
So we're like, "Oh, so you do want albums?"
You do want it.
Some people do. Some people just want singles and they want one song from a record or two.
Well, I think your music lends itself to a bigger picture.
We hope so.
Well, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I think generally speaking, pop music probably one-offs that are a little more popular, right? You guys are
Sure.
a lot deeper than that. And actually, this album is comes off almost like, I don't want to say a concept album, but there's definitely a thread through there. And I've read, Brendan, you had a big life change. There's a long-term breakup that led to some of the writing. Like it's not a breakup album, but there's
Right.
definitely that kind of that feel throughout.
Yeah, there's. Well, no. No, there's. I think for all of our albums, they're always kind of a snapshot of where we are collectively as a creative outfit, also as a family. We're a band, but we're very much a family after this long. And but then inevitably, as a lyricist, I think people are going to get kind of a snapshot of where I am emotionally,
Personally,
psychologically, maybe even spiritually.
Yeah.
For better or worse. So it wasn't necessarily a dark time writing the record because it was actually a very graceful unfolding of a long-term relationship. It wasn't the kind of horrific, get out of my house kind of a breakup. It was more of like, I love you. But things are changing. Our lives are changing. It's evolving, yeah. And so sometimes that can be extremely challenging, but it was a really wonderful opportunity just in writing lyrics. Music for me has always been a form of catharsis. It's always been a kind of therapy. I think one of the reasons a lot of our favorite artists get good at their craft is that they are, whether they know it or not, they're escaping something. There's a circumstance in their life that they are trying to transcend or overcome or understand better. And so I know that for me, I got good at drawing. I got really good at drawing right around the time my parents were divorcing.
Interesting.
And that's not a coincidence.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I know that Michael, our guitar player, took to the guitar and really started developing music kind of obsessively around the time his parents were divorcing too. It's like these things aren't coincidences. And so they end up being kind of amazing circumstances that some people will use art and craft or music as a means of escaping into almost like an alternate reality, and then those alternate realities bear fruit sometimes.
It's kind of
we
like,
get albums out of them.
Yeah, it's like epiphanic, right? It's like quiet epiphanies, or sometimes loud epiphanies. Big things change in your life, and you get drawn into, and as an artist, you get drawn into the emotion of it, and turn it into something, and turn it into something that people love.
We hope, yeah, and that's always been something that we've hoped would be if there was an ethos to this band, and there are a handful of things that we pride ourselves on. One of the things that I think that we still have and we're still proud of is the fact that we've always given authentic sort of depictions of where we are. Anything you've ever heard from us, whether you like it or not, that's exactly where we were, or that's exactly where we are, in a very honest way.
And how is that to revisit those moments on stage? You know, like that's when "Wish You Were Here" came out, you were at a certain when you wrote those lyrics. Do you find the lyrics, the songs, do they change meaning to you guys?
For me, they absolutely do, because a song can be finished, and from a certain perspective, but then it's never really finished. Especially when you continue to play the songs live, or even when someone's listening to the finished, quote unquote, finished recording in their headphones or driving in a car. At that point, it's moving through their unique filter, in their unique individual experience, and so therefore it has a life of its own.
Yeah.
It's continuing to grow and evolve, and their opinions of it are changing and moving. So that's another one of the amazing things about music, is that you could be reminded of a time in your life, whether it's a hopeful time or a sad time or a joyous time, and go back to that moment really distinctly, but then be like, this feels a little bit different now, and I like that it feels different, it's changing, and you kind of like learn to love that song again. We've all had a song that we loved with someone, and then that person is not in our lives anymore, and then we hate that song for a long time, and then we rediscover the song,
Go back.
and take it back, for ourselves.
Well, I've heard Eddie.
Give it new meaning.
Yeah,
Exactly.
absolutely. I heard Eddie Vedder talk about the song "Alive" for Pearl Jam, and how that there's been tragedy involved with that song, what it meant to him when he wrote it, and now what it means. They just performed it at the Rock and Roll Hall of
Yeah.
Fame, and what it meant to them, and how it changed. It's kind of like a really big picture of how those things can change.
For sure.
When you guys are in the studio this time around, you're working with Dave Sardi. Is it Sardi? I'm pronouncing
Yes.
it right. Sorry.
Yeah.
And he's a fan of the band. I was reading you were saying how was it working with when you choose producers? Because I know Skrillex is involved in this, and that kind of came about organically, having
Yeah.
Skrillex work on your album, on one song on the album. How is it working with a guy who is has intimate knowledge of the band? Do you find it? Would you prefer to work with somebody who maybe is coming in fresh, or how does it work?
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, we all have a mutual respect for each other. I know the work that he's done in the past. He's highly capable of taking that position, and for us to have sort of that objective opinion and ear to come in, is something that I think is pretty valuable for us. And to bring Dave in just made sense. And some of the guys in the band for a long time and are friends. So it wasn't an unnatural process at all, and he did a really great job at sort of just pushing us, and I think more so than we have in the past. And it was nice because we've worked with Vernon O'Brien for the last few records, and just get some new fresh ears and blood into the mix was really positive. And I think it led us to our final product being the best that it could be.
It also, I believe, because it was more challenging to work with someone who was a fan of
I've
the
read
band.
you say a few things
Yeah.
that he pushed you.
He definitely pushed us lovingly. It was never with any malintent. It was always not that I know of.
I hate you. Do it again.
Right, exactly. I think that his admiration and his history with the band just as a listener created perhaps an unrealistically high expectation of what we were capable of. But without that expectation in place, we would have never have gotten to some of the places that we got to. He sent me home countless times to rewrite.
Sent you home. So you're done. Like as
Well,
if,
I mean, that sounds kind of harsh, but
pointed to the door.
yeah, you
Go home, Brandon.
Go home, Brandon. And there were a lot of times where it was really, really frustrating, because you can't help but have, you as a lyricist, but any element of what anybody in the band is doing, you're emotionally attached to it. If you're in a creative pursuit and you're there because you love being there, your heart is there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's one of the great things about all the guys in this band, is that everybody wants to be there. But when you've brought your heart into something and then someone's like, "Good job, man, you can do a lot better, go home." It hurts.
Sure, of course
So
it
we
does.
have to.
Constructive criticism, I believe, is what they
Yeah.
try to call it.
Yeah, but there were a lot of rewrites on this record. There was a lot of honing of ideas, and it was mostly me that he was honing in on, but there were a couple of moments where we spent weeks and weeks and weeks on the music of a song, and then he sat us all down, would listen back to what we recorded, and then he'd asked us, there's a song called Undefeated, which started as something completely different. And he's like, "What's your guys' favorite part of this song musically?" And we all agreed that it was the bridge. The bridge is dope. Yeah, it's dope. It's like, okay, we're throwing away the rest of the song, and we're gonna write a song that's as dope as the bridge.
Wow.
And it was like, we all were kind of like, shit. But he's right. So sometimes we can, you can get kind of like a little self-congratulatory because it's, at this point we know how to make stuff that like sounds rad, but that's not enough. Like it's got to have an emotional resonance. It's got to have something that no other song I've ever done has before. And so these are really high standards. It's a really high bar to set for oneself.
Well, it comes across in the album.
I hope so.
The album 8, the album 8 is really great. We're really looking forward to seeing you guys back here in Toronto in the summer with Jimmy Eat World. And congratulations on all the success. And thank you so much for coming in and talking to us here at 94.9
Thank you too.
Live.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Appreciate it.
Beauty. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
That was great.